Autumn is upon us. Unfortunately, that means the end of pool season. We're now going to show you how to winterize your above-ground pool. One suggestion before we start, have a look in and around the pool for any possible leaks. It's always best to fix before winter arrives, which will make things much easier come next spring. It's also important to keep your filtration system active until the very last minute when you're really ready to close up. One of the main reasons being that outdoor temperatures tend to drop drastically at this time of year. So we want to avoid a layer of ice forming on the surface of the water. To avoid that, we want to keep the water moving. We also want the water to stay as clean as possible, right up to when we're ready to winterize. So it's a good idea to even test the water so that you can winterize with the water being within all the right parameters for pH and alkalinity. Another suggestion, take a few photos before closing the pool. It'll help you place everything back in place next spring. It's always a good idea to plan your winterizing in advance, as the day before, we recommend that you pour a half gallon of Trevi Stop, our degreaser, directly into the water, which we'll leave in for 12 to 24 hours. Half the bottle is about 2 liters. We'll pour it directly into the water, so after 12 to 24 hours, the following day we'll be ready to proceed with the winterizing. To clean the liner of the pool, the Trevi Stop, the degreaser, will do the job for the submerged surface, but for the part that is exposed to the air above the water surface, we'll need to clean that separately. It's important as it will prolong the life of your pool liner, because if we let the dirt dry over the winter, it'll be very hard to clean come springtime. We'll do that with the vinyl net. We'll wet our cloth, spray on the vinyl net, and proceed to scrub, which we can do now or wait for the water level to decrease. Now we're going to clean the sand from the sand filter. First, we'll close the pump of our pool, the motor. We'll turn the handle of our filter and turn to the backwash position. We'll turn on the pump and we'll pour in the filter cleaner, pouring the contents of the bottle directly into the skimmer. The cleaner has a pink color, so have a look at the little glass tube, which is transparent. And once you see that the water is back to being clear, we can stop the cleaning. If your pool has a cartridge filtration system, this is the time to clean the cartridges. Under the skimmer, turn off the access to the pump using the 3-way valve and close the valve attached directly to the filter. We need to empty the water from the filter, so we turn the handle to the backwash position. We'll open the valve on the filter, which will allow the water to flow properly. Then we'll unscrew the ring, open the filter, and unattach our cartridge, and we're going to soak it. We're going to use our filter cleaner with a ratio of 1 cup per 5 liters of water. We're going to need a container big enough to submerge the cartridge fully. Leave it in to soak for 6 hours, and then we're going to rinse it. The best way to rinse is from the inside, so we'll attach our hose, insert it in the cartridge, and get a nice deep clean from the inside. And then we can store it indoors in a dry spot. Next, we reattach the top of the filter, we'll close the valve on top, and proceed to the next steps. It is important to remember to remove the ladder from the pool while the water level is still high. If not, it'll be much heavier if you're trying to lift it once the water level is low. The next step, regardless of if you have a sand filter or a cartridge filter, is to lower the water level. First thing is to make sure to turn off the motor. So off goes the pump, and the same goes for both types of filters. We're going to want to close the skimmer, so we'll turn our handle so that the arrow is pointing up. That will make sure that the water flows solely from the bottom drain. But we want to avoid any air from infiltrating, so we'll insert a hose into the skimmer and turn it on to a low flow in the skimmer. We'll then turn the handle of the sand filter to waste. If you have a cartridge filter, you'll have a handle you'll find on top of your pump, and we'll turn that handle to the backwash position. Make sure that the water goes down enough so that it rests at 20 inches below the bottom of the skimmer. Now that the water level is at the appropriate height, we'll put away a few smaller items. We'll start by removing the basket from the skimmer. We'll place the skimmer door inside the skimmer basket. As well, you'll want to unscrew the water return. First, the eyeball fitting and ring. And then using this blue key we can get at the interior. Now we have a very important step. We need to prepare the bottom drain for the winter, and we want to avoid any damage during the cold season. We'll start by removing the quick connect. I recommend a tool like this one. We'll start with the pump. Once the tube has been unattached, we can place it vertically. We'll attach it to the top seat of the pool, but you might need to loosen the quick connect that attaches to the valve to give it the right amount of motion. However, just make sure you retighten it once you have the tube in the right position, as you don't want that to be loose over the winter. Now, take a tie wrap. Make sure it's a very good quality tie wrap. String it through the ring and underneath the top seat. Or, in this case, we'll take off the little protector and insert our tie wrap in the opening to make sure it's nice and tightly attached. Next up, we're adding antifreeze to the skimmer. But first, we have to make sure the three-way valve is positioned so that all the lines are open. Depending on the size of your pool, it will require 1 or 2 gallons of antifreeze, which we'll pour directly into the skimmer. After the antifreeze, we're going to insert our foam tubing. We'll start by inserting one into the tube we had just placed vertically. The second one goes in the hole of the skimmer. And again, at the end, refold the extremity so both ends go inside the hole of the skimmer. We then put the styrofoam in for storage. The round one goes at the bottom of the skimmer, while the other one, from the inside of the pool, will plug up the mouth of the skimmer, and we finish by inserting this piece of wood. Next up, we're going to take care of our pump. You're going to want to remove the 2 drainage plugs, one on the side and one in the front. We'll unscrew them so that the pump can empty by letting the water flow out. Next, we unscrew the cover, take out the basket to wash it out. Once it's clean, we can simply put it back. Same goes for the drainage plugs. We'll screw them back in. Next, we'll unscrew the quick connect that connects the filter to the pump. And we'll store the pump indoors over the winter. There are a few steps to follow for the sand filtration system. First of all, we're going to turn the handle to winter mode. We'll unscrew our pressure gauge, and we'll do the same with our glass tube. Be careful with the sealing gasket, so as not to lose it. And last step, we'll unscrew the drainage plug at the bottom. This plug will be stored for the season along with the pressure gauge and the glass tube. Last step for the cartridge filter. We're going to take out the drainage plug to allow the remaining water to flow out, and then reattach that plug back for the winter. If you are in possession of a chlorinator for your above-ground pool, we'll need to prep that for winter as well. We'll start by placing it in the full position. We'll unscrew the top to empty it out. Be careful with the sealing gasket. And now we'll turn it over and empty out the water. Next, put back the gasket and the cover, unscrew the two tubes, and we'll store the chlorinator indoors, as we'll do with the pump. Let's start by unplugging the ozonator itself. Next, we'll take care of the manifold of the ozonator. We'll unscrew the quick connect that connects the manifold to the pool, and you see the injector that's connected to this green tube. We'll unattach that as well, and that's going to spend the winter outdoors. However, the manifold and the plumbing that connects the ozonator to the filter or to the heat pump, all of that needs to be stored indoors for the winter. For the salt system panel, simply turn to the off position. Unplug from the power supply and turn off the cell, and we can simply take it down and store indoors for the winter. If you do have a salt system for your above-ground pool, it's very important to clean the cell out well and store it for the winter. So the elbow is attached to the water return. We remove the cell by unscrewing the quick connect. Be diligent, you'll see a sealing gasket. It's probably a good idea to store that indoors throughout the winter as well, as we don't want to lose it. The elbow will stay out in the winter on top of the water return. We're going to clean the cell. Start by placing the cell stand on the end that doesn't have the plug. Screw on the stand and stand it upright on a stable surface. Then we'll pour in the entire bottle of our cell cleaner and let it soak for about 20 minutes. Once that's done, we'll rinse out the cell and store it indoors for the winter. Next up, we're going to drain our heat pump. If you have a pump with the drain plug, remove the plug to let the water flow out. In this case, there is no drain plug, so we'll unscrew the two quick connects which are attached to the tubes, and the water will drain out. To make sure to get all the water out, you may need to lean it on an angle slightly. We'll then take expansion plugs, we'll put one in the bottom hole. Before placing the other one, we'll fill up the heat pump with high-quality antifreeze, the same one we used for the skimmer. To fill the heat pump, it'll take about 3/4 of the bottle of antifreeze. Then, we'll plug the hole with an expansion plug. We'll complete the procedure by putting on a protective cover. Once the heat pump is ready for the winter, don't forget to turn off the breaker inside the house. If you have colored lights for your above-ground pool, simply unplug and store the transformer. If you have an elite light, we'll need to store the transformer indoors. The transformer's wires are attached to the casing, which is the part outside of the pool. So you pull it off and leave the light inside the pool. We'll still protect it with a piece of styrofoam. We still have some items to pour in the water. We'll start with pouring in the remainder of the Trevi stop, the degreaser, which we used to protect the pool lining at the beginning of this process. You'll also want to include the rest of the closing kit, which will be recommended to you when you visit a Trevi store to explain to them your pool specifications. We've done some very good work, but still a few steps to go. We're going to want to install our pool cover and the elastic system to keep it properly in place. We'll start with the cable, which goes around the pool. Always best to get someone to help with this step, as it's difficult to do alone. Keep a good tension on the cable and then attach it using this winch. Keep it tense by going on the outside of the joints. The amount of elastics will ultimately depend on the size of your pool. Here we have 7 elastics that stretch across from one joint to the opposite joint. So I attach my hook here, and I go to the opposite side to attach the other hook. Now the cover is properly installed using the elastic system. All that's left is to tighten it. Use the winch from our wire that goes around the pool. We'll tighten it slightly just to make sure it's solid enough. If you have followed all the steps we did together today, your pool should be ready for the winter, and you'll find it in good shape next spring. However, it's never 100% without risk, so I suggest you consult your insurance policy just to make sure your pool is among the insurable items of your residence. And with that, I wish you a great winter.